6 hours of roasting, basting, and baking ended up at the bottom of a black plastic garbage bag. I stood entirely still by the kitchen island, watching the heavy clumps of mashed potatoes slide down the plastic liner. The scent of rosemary, garlic, and slow-cooked turkey still hung warm in the air, a stark contrast to the cold reality unfolding in front of me. David, my son, tied the top of the garbage bag into a tight knot. He didn't even look at me. Beside him, his wife Sarah set a tall stack of cardboard takeout boxes on my pristine granite counter. "We ordered better food," David chuckled, tossing the trash bag toward the back door. "Sarah's favorite place had a premium holiday catering package. I knew you'd probably just make the same dry stuff you always do." I looked at the counter. My grandmother's ceramic serving bowls sat empty. The glazed ham, the green bean casserole I had started preparing before sunrise, the homemade cranberry sauce, all gone. Simply erased before anyone had even taken a bite. Sarah opened one of the cardboard boxes, revealing lukewarm truffle fries and a prepackaged steak. She pulled a fork from my drawer. "Honestly, Loretta, you should thank us. Now you don't have to do the dishes." I did not scream. I did not cry. Crying was for women who believed their tears could change the behavior of selfish people. I had spent 2 years letting David and Sarah live in my house rent-free so they could save for a down payment. 2 years of biting my tongue while they treated my home like an all-inclusive resort. I reached around my waist and untied the strings of my apron. I folded it twice and laid it gently over the back of a dining chair. "Where are you going?" David frowned, noticing my silence. "The food is getting cold." I grabbed my purse and my car keys from the hook by the door. I stepped over the trash bag, opened the back door, and walked out into the crisp December air. The dashboard clock glowed softly in the dark cabin of my sedan. It was barely 5 in the afternoon on Christmas Day, and the suburban streets were empty. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. David. I pressed the volume button down, cutting off the vibration, and kept my eyes on the road. I drove downtown, pulling into the circular driveway of the Marriott. The lobby was grand, quiet, and smelled of pine needles and expensive cinnamon candles. I walked straight to the front desk and booked their nicest available suite for the night. Upstairs, the room was immaculate. No dirty socks kicked under the coffee table. No passive-aggressive sticky notes from Sarah complaining about the brand of laundry detergent I bought. Just crisp white sheets and total silence. I ordered room service, a medium rare ribeye, and a glass of red wine. I ate by the window, watching the city lights blink against the dark sky. For the past 24 months, I had convinced myself that I was being a good mother. My late husband, Thomas, always told me to take care of our boy. But Thomas never meant for me to become a servant in my own home. I had allowed my boundaries to blur under the guise of family support. My phone lit up again. This time, a text message from Sarah. "David is upset you left. You're ruining Christmas. Come back and clean up this kitchen. It smells like garbage." I took a slow sip of my wine. The audacity was almost impressive. They threw away 6 hours of my hard work, ordered expensive takeout while claiming poverty, and still expected me to be the maid. I set the wine glass down. The sadness that usually followed their disrespect was entirely gone. In its place, a calm, cold clarity settled over me. I wasn't going to argue with them anymore. Arguments required 2 people who cared about each other's feelings. I was simply going to change the rules of the house. I returned home at 10 o'clock the next morning. The house was dead quiet. I walked into the kitchen and stopped. The countertops were a graveyard of grease-stained cardboard, half-eaten steak and dried ketchup. The trash bag containing my Christmas dinner still sat by the back door, leaking a small puddle of turkey drippings onto the hardwood floor. David and Sarah were upstairs sleeping in. Instead of grabbing a sponge, I pulled out my phone and searched for a premium same-day cleaning service. I found a company specializing in post-event cleanup and booked a rush appointment. An hour later, 3 women in uniform arrived with heavy-duty supplies. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee while they scrubbed the kitchen top to bottom, sanitized the floors, and hauled away the garbage. When they finished, the kitchen gleamed. I swiped my credit card on their tablet and thanked them. The total came to $350. Just as the cleaning van pulled out of the driveway, David stumbled downstairs, rubbing his eyes. He wore sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looking around the spotless kitchen. "Oh, you cleaned," he muttered, walking toward the fridge. "Took you long enough." I slid the printed receipt across the kitchen island. "I didn't clean. The professionals did. You owe me $350. David stared at the paper, letting out a short, incredulous laugh. "Are you serious? You expect me to pay for a maid? I expect you to clean up your own messes. You didn't. So I hired someone who would." I picked up my coffee mug. "I need the money transferred to my account by noon." "We don't have $350 to waste, Mom. We're saving for a house." I glanced at the empty space where the expensive catered food boxes had been. "You had enough for premium catering yesterday." "Noon, David." He crossed his arms, his face turning red. "I'm not paying it." I nodded slowly. I walked over to the entryway table, picked up the keys to the SUV. He drove the one registered in my name and dropped them into my purse. "Then you're taking this bus." David transferred the $350 by 11:45 a.m. The resentment in the house grew thick, but I ignored it. I spent the afternoon reading a novel in the sunroom, refusing to engage in their silent treatment. The next day, Sarah decided to retaliate. I came home from a walk to find her standing in the kitchen, casually dumping a brand new bag of my expensive organic coffee beans into the sink. She turned on the disposal, grinding them away. "Oh, Loretta." She smiled thinly. "I think these beans went bad. They smelled awful. You don't mind, right?" She was testing me. She wanted a screaming match. She wanted me to act like an unhinged mother-in-law so she could play the victim. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I simply walked past her, washed my hands in the other sink, and went up to my bedroom. An hour later, I drove to the local hardware store. I bought 2 heavy-duty combination padlocks, a drill, and some steel hasps. When I got back, Sarah was on the couch, glued to her phone. I walked into the kitchen, plugged in the drill, and went to work. The noise brought David running downstairs. "What are you doing?" he demanded over the loud whir of the drill. I fastened the steel plate to the double doors of the main pantry. I snapped the padlock shut, gave it a spin, and moved to the deep freezer in the garage to do the same. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Did you just lock the pantry?" "Yes," I replied, putting the drill back in its case. "How are we supposed to eat?" she demanded, her voice climbing an octave. "The same way you ate on Christmas?" I smiled gently. "You order it. Or you buy your own groceries and keep them in the mini fridge upstairs. My food is off limits." David stepped forward. "Mom, this is insane. You're treating us like criminals." "I am treating you like roommates who destroy my property," I corrected him. I wiped down the counter, picked up my purse, and walked out of the kitchen, leaving them staring at the shiny brass locks. For 3 days, the house operated in a state of tense silence. David and Sarah brought in fast food bags, eating in their room to avoid me. I enjoyed the quiet. I cooked small, healthy meals for myself and watched the evening news in peace. On Thursday morning, I noticed David sitting at the dining table with his gaming laptop. He usually worked from home twice a week, though I rarely heard him typing anything resembling a spreadsheet. Mostly, I heard the frantic clicking of video games. I walked into the home office, opened the internet provider's app on my phone, and changed the Wi-Fi network name and password. Then I restarted the router. Less than 2 minutes later, David's heavy footsteps pounded down the hallway. He stopped in the office doorway looking frantic. Did the internet go down? I'm in the middle of a ranked match. I looked up from my book. The internet is fine. I changed the password. He blinked. Okay. What is it? I pulled a small notepad from the desk drawer and wrote down a number. I slid it across the wood surface. David picked it up. $100, he read aloud. Per month, I clarified. Payable on the 1st. Since we are no longer sharing meals, we are no longer sharing utilities. You use the majority of the bandwidth anyway. Mom, I need the internet to work, he shouted, throwing the paper down. You can't do this. You have a mobile hotspot on your phone. Use that. Sarah appeared behind him wearing her silk robe. Loretta, this is financial abuse. We live here. I closed my book. I looked at Sarah, then at David. You live in a house I own, using electricity. I pay for drinking water I provide. You throw my efforts in the garbage and waste my belongings. The free ride is over. $100 or use your data. David glared at me. His fists clenched. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen furiously, and transferred the money. I wrote the new password on a sticky note and handed it to him. Next month's payment is due on the 1st. Don't be late. Sarah did not like losing control. Since moving in, she had successfully managed to make me feel like a guest in my own home. Now that I was actively reclaiming my space, she resorted to her favorite tactic, emotional manipulation. Saturday morning, I sat on the porch with my tea. The front door banged open. Sarah marched out, dragging a large, heavy suitcase behind her. David trailed behind, looking miserable. We can't live like this, Loretta, Sarah announced loudly, making sure the neighbor across the street could hear. We are leaving. We'll go stay at a hotel until we find a place. I hope you're happy. She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, adjusting her sunglasses. She didn't walk toward their car. She just stood there waiting. I knew this game. She expected me to panic. She expected me to rush down the stairs, apologize, and beg them to stay. She wanted me to promise that things would go back to the way they were. I took a slow sip of my chamomile tea. The morning air was wonderful. Okay. I nodded. Sarah lowered her sunglasses, peering at me. Okay. Yes. Drive safe. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan, pulled out a small notepad, and set it on the porch table. Before you go, please leave your house keys here. I'll need them to lock up. David shifted uncomfortably. Mom, she means it. We're leaving. I heard her, David. I think it's a wonderful idea. A hotel will give you the privacy you need. I tapped the notepad. The keys, please. Sarah's face flushed deep red. The realization hit her that I was calling her bluff. Hotels were expensive, and they hadn't actually saved much money. She looked at David, waiting for him to defend her, but he just stared at the porch floor. Without a word, Sarah turned around, gripped the handle of her suitcase, and dragged it back up the porch steps. She pushed past me, the wheels thumping loudly against the hardwood floor inside. I picked up my tea and watched the neighborhood birds. They weren't leaving today, but the countdown had officially begun. By week 2 of the new rules, the tension in the house shifted from explosive to cold and calculated. Sarah realized tantrums didn't work, so she tried claiming territory. I came home from a doctor's appointment to find the door to the master bedroom propped open. My late husband Thomas's heavy oak reading chair, a piece I cherished, was sitting in the hallway. Inside the room, Sarah was measuring the windows with a yellow tape measure. David was standing by my dresser. What is going on in here? I asked, keeping my voice perfectly level. Sarah didn't even turn around. We're measuring for curtains. David and I decided that since we're a couple, it makes more sense for us to have the larger bedroom. You're just one person, Loretta. The guest room is plenty big for you. David rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding eye contact. Yeah, Mom. Sarah has a lot of clothes, and the closet in the guest room is tiny. We figured we'd swap this weekend. They had completely bypassed asking me and went straight to planning the takeover. I walked over to the oak chair in the hallway. I pushed it back into the master bedroom, sliding it firmly into its usual spot by the window. Loretta, watch the walls. Sarah sighed. I turned to David. Go to the garage. Get your toolbox. Why? He asked. Because you are going to take the door off the hinges of the guest room, I replied. Sarah spun around. Excuse me, why would he do that? Because if you cannot respect closed doors and private spaces, you don't get a door at all. I pointed at David. Toolbox, now. Or I will hire a carpenter to remove the door and add it to your internet bill. David looked at Sarah, then at my unwavering expression. He slumped his shoulders and walked past me toward the stairs. You can't do that, Sarah snapped. We need privacy. Then you should find a house that belongs to you, I offered simply. I stepped out of the master bedroom and locked the door behind me. The missing guest room door forced David and Sarah into an awkward reality. Every time they argued, the sound echoed down the hall. Every time they watched television, I could hear it. I didn't mind the noise. I enjoyed watching them realize they had zero control. But I was tired. I was tired of the disrespect, the entitlement, and the constant lingering stress in my chest. On a Tuesday afternoon, I stopped by a shipping supply store. I bought 50 large, heavy-duty cardboard boxes and 3 rolls of packing tape. I carried them inside and stacked them neatly in the center of the living room, right in front of the television. When David and Sarah came home from work, they stopped dead in the entryway. What is this? David asked, gesturing to the mountain of flat cardboard. Those are moving boxes, I stated, folding laundry on the armchair. You have 14 days to pack your belongings and find a new place to live. Sarah let out a sharp, mocking laugh. You're kicking your own son out over Christmas dinner. You're insane, Loretta. I am asking my adult tenants to vacate the premises, I corrected her. 14 days. That gives you 2 weekends to pack. David shook his head, a smug smile forming on his lips. You won't do it, Mom. You're just trying to scare us. Where are we supposed to go? That is a problem for you and your wife to solve, I answered. We're not packing, Sarah declared, grabbing David's arm. Leave the boxes there all year if you want. We aren't moving. They walked upstairs, their footsteps heavy and defiant. They really believed I was bluffing. They thought my motherly guilt would eventually kick in, forcing me to fold up the boxes and apologize. I set down the towel I was folding. I picked up one of the flat boxes, popped it open, and ran a strip of tape across the bottom. I walked upstairs to the hallway. Bathroom opened Sarah's cabinet and started throwing her expensive hair products into the box. I wasn't bluffing. 14 days came and went. David and Sarah didn't pack a single box. In fact, to prove how unbothered they were by my deadline, they booked a weekend trip to a nearby wine country. They left Friday evening laughing as they walked out the front door. See you Sunday, Mom, David called out. Don't touch our stuff. The moment their car turned the corner, I picked up my phone. Saturday morning, a large 15-foot U-Haul truck backed into my driveway. Shortly after, 3 sturdy college students from the neighborhood arrived. I had hired them for the day at $20 an hour. Everything in the guest room, the guest bathroom, and the hall closet. I directed them. Pack it tight, load it up. I spent the entire day supervising. We boxed up David's gaming consoles, Sarah's endless wardrobe, their shoes, their luxury toiletries, and the expensive bedding they had bought. I made sure nothing was broken. I folded their clothes neatly. I packed their fragile items with bubble wrap. I was evicting them, but I wasn't going to lower myself to vandalism. By 5 o'clock, the guest room was completely empty. Bare walls, bare floors. The U-Haul in the driveway was packed to the brim, the heavy metal door rolled down and secured with a padlock. I paid the students, tipped them generously, and thanked them for their help. Before the sun went down, I grabbed my toolkit. I walked to the front door, unscrewed the smart lock mechanism they use to enter the house, and replaced it with a heavy brass deadbolt I had purchased the week before. I went to the back door and did the same. I walked through my quiet, clean house. The air felt lighter. I poured myself a cup of herbal tea, sat in Thomas's oak chair, and watched the evening news. For the first time in 2 years, I didn't feel like a stranger in my own home. Now all I had to do was wait for Sunday. Sunday evening arrived with a quiet drizzle of rain. I sat by the front window reading a book when David's car pulled up to the curb. They couldn't park in the driveway because the U-Haul was blocking it. I watched David and Sarah step out of the car. They stared at the large orange and white truck parked directly in front of the garage. David frowned, saying something to Sarah. They jogged up the porch steps to get out of the rain. I heard David tap the keypad of the old smart lock. Nothing happened. He tried again. I marked my page, set my book down, and walked to the front door. I unlocked the heavy new deadbolt and pulled the door open. David stood there, his hand raised to knock. Sarah was peering through the glass. "Mom, what is going on?" David demanded, his eyes darting to the new lock. "Where's the keypad, and whose truck is that?" I stepped out onto the covered porch, pulling the door partially shut behind me. I reached into my cardigan pocket and held out a small silver key on a plastic ring. "That is your truck," I said calmly. "I paid for the rental through Tuesday. The tank is full." Sarah's jaw dropped. She looked at the truck, then back at me. "You packed our stuff. You went through our things. Everything is boxed carefully. Nothing is broken." I pressed the key into David's limp hand. David stared at the key as if it were burning his palm. "Mom, you can't do this. We don't have an apartment lined up. Where are we supposed to sleep tonight?" "That catering company you loved so much on Christmas, perhaps they rent rooms," I suggested smoothly. "Loretta, this is illegal," Sarah shrieked, stepping forward. "I own the house, Sarah. You paid no rent. You were guests. Now the visit is over." I looked at my son one last time. "Grow up, David." I stepped back inside, pulled the heavy oak door shut, and slid the deadbolt into place, with a satisfying, heavy click. Outside, they stood completely speechless in the rain. Inside the house was warm, quiet, and finally entirely mine.